No, just give me like 5 more minutes with Super Mario Galaxy. We're not really recording right now. Oh, we are. Okay, well, two things are true today. One, yes, I still have not beat Super Mario Galaxy. And two, I did watch the Super Mario Brothers movie. So let's talk about it. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review, and mamma mia, we're finally here. The Super Mario Brothers movie is about to hit theaters this week, and I had the chance to watch it early. A huge thanks to Universal Pictures for making that happen, and you can also check it out in theaters on April 5th. It's right, it's dropping a little bit earlier, just because, well, I mean, it's Easter weekend, so they're trying to rake in those holiday bucks, and if you missed my out-of-theater reaction, well, you can find it floating around down below in the description or at the top of the screen. And spoiler, I enjoyed this movie. It's directed by Aaron Horvath and Michael Jelenic, and it's starring Chris Pratt as Mario, Anya Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach, Charlie Day as Luigi, Jack Black as Bowser, Keegan-Michael as Toad, and Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. Admittedly, I was on the fence about the voice cast, but I came away pleasantly surprised with some and a little timid still on others, but we'll get there, of course. Now, if you don't know much about the movie, well, hey, it's Mario. If you've ever played a Mario game before in your life, you kind of understand Mario goes to try to save the princess from Bowser. But there's a little bit more than that here. In the Super Mario Brothers movie, we follow Brooklyn plumbers Mario and Luigi, and while working underground to fix a water main, they're transported down a mysterious pipe and wander into a magical new world. But when the brothers are separated, Mario embarks on an epic quest to find Luigi. With help from Toad and some training from the strong-willed ruler of the Mushroom Kingdom, that's right, Princess Peach, Mario taps into his own power. Alrighty, I know you're begging me to get to my positives and my negatives, but before we get there, if this is your very first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you do too, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, and tap on that bell, y'all, and hit the thumbs up button so this video can get in the face of more Mario fans just like yourself. And get loud in the comments down below and let me know which Mario game is your favorite. Lately, guys, it might be Odyssey. Alrighty, so guys, let's get right into my positives because there's a lot of good to talk about with this movie, surprisingly. Let's begin with the animation because, my goodness, Illumination knocked it out of the park here. There are some lush, vibrant worlds on display. I mean, we have immersive and completely alive worlds in this movie, like Donkey Kong Island. You have Mushroom Kingdom, which is just a joy when you first break into that world. It's amazing to see what they did. They really brought everything to life in the best way possible. And I know some people are on the fence about Illumination's animation, but there's a reason Nintendo went that route and chose that studio to animate their film because it works. We also get so many teases of worlds to come in possible future films. There's this traversal montage with Princess Peach, Mario, and Toad where they cross a lot of worlds and it looks really good, including a tease to Yoshi's Island. It just shows how expansive this world is, and I'm hoping we get a sequel because there are some other worlds I'd love to see on full display. I mean, they even tease Super Mario Galaxy at one point and Odyssey. It's really cool just to, as a fan, to see this, and newcomers I think will love how beautiful it looks as well. But it ain't all sunshine and stars in this movie, guys. There are some dark worlds. But even those brooding undertones in those darker worlds still were fun to witness and see unfold. The Darklands with Dry Bones and Shy Guys was awesome, and then you have Bowser's Kingdom, which was really well animated too. Visually, this movie is an A+. There is nothing I can tell you negatively about this film. Some people probably would want this maybe in a cartoon form instead of those photorealistic animation moments, but I'm sorry, I think it works just fine the way it is, especially if you're familiar with the recent Mario games and how great the graphics are in those games as well. But outside of the animation, there's so much nostalgia in this film. There are plenty of Easter eggs, and I found myself smiling in so many scenes. Just some off the top of my head that I can think of: Rainbow Road. That sequence, of course, if you're a Mario Kart fan, you know that track has probably made you pull your hair out more often than not. But my goodness, Mario Kart fans, you're gonna love this scene. And honestly, it kind of starts when you get into Donkey Kong Island, where you get introduced to karting, you know, the different karts that are on display, the customization. But it was so fun, and it made me feel like a kid all over again. And then there's this incredible scene. It's a training sequence with Mario and Peach, where Princess Peach tries to just train Mario a bit on how to use power-ups and get through obstacles. And the power-ups from this point on were treated with so much respect. It wasn't just a gimmick. It worked, and it was flawlessly executed within the narrative, and it was so fun to see. It was so fun to see, and I won't tell you what happens with the superstar sequence, but it's fun. And remember when I told you about Easter eggs? Well, you're gonna want to keep your ears open for one in particular, and that's Charles Martinet's voice. The legend himself, the original, the foundation for why we love Mario's voice so much. Charles Martinet is in this movie a few more times than you'd expect him to. I didn't even know until I looked at IMDb that he voices Mario's dad, but it's really cool because there's also a moment where I swear he's giving us the authentic Mario voice early on in the film and towards the end. So again, keep your ears open and your eyes, because there are so many Easter eggs even outside of that one moment. And there are plenty of sound effects here and musical cues that warmed my heart. You'll know them when you hear them, but for the most part, the musical cues work, you know, the da-da-da-da-da-da. It comes into play so well in the background. And then in the Mario Karting sequence, when you're going and selecting different customization options, the menu noises, it all blends together so well, and it is near perfect. And speaking of warming my heart, I like the humor. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm a sucker for some of those low-hanging fruit jokes, but yeah, it was lighthearted and it worked for me. And the last thing in this section I want to talk about is Brian Tyler's score. He is already a really good composer, and if you're a fan of the MCU, he's scored and composed many movies in that universe. But here in the Super Mario Bros. Movie, I did not expect him to go so hard sometimes. The man is able to blend the classic themes that we're used to from Koji Kondo, but we also understand that he's putting his own spin on it. So while I'm sure he's taking inspiration from Koji Kondo's legendary scores, I do think that here in this instance, he's giving it a more modern approach while still staying faithful to the source material, and that's beautiful. I heard a little bit of Super Mario Odyssey and Galaxy musical cues, including classical entries into the franchise, so I'm prepared to say this is already one of my favorite scores of the year. Time is ticking. We need that score streaming right now on Apple Music. Just saying. Alrighty, y'all. So let's get right into the next section here, and it really is the voice cast. Alrighty. So I know you're asking questions. How was Chris Pratt's voice? And I was wondering the same too. I wanted to know, because in the trailers, the teaser trailers, I wasn't sold. And if anything, I thought it would kind of ruin the movie because he didn't sound like Mario. But, you know, it's not bad. That's right, Chris Pratt's Mario voice is not awful. I was expecting it to be pretty bad, like I said, but they address his accent in the movie very early on, in the very first scene actually. And it makes sense as to why it's not an exaggerated Italian accent. Listen, does he sometimes break into that? Yes, and surprisingly, works really well. Like, I cannot find fault in his overly exaggerated Mario accent, but it's the Brooklyn plumber kind of accent that I have an issue with when he's just himself. Sometimes it sounds a little too much like Chris Pratt and not much like a Mario character. There's not enough of immersion with his voice. From time to time I find myself just thinking, this is just Chris Pratt. But I'm not mad at it because it's not awful. If it was terribly distracting, I would tell you and I would be honest, but I don't think it is. At times though, I felt like his Mario voice was lacking a punch. And that's what I mean. In those instances, it sounded too much like Chris Pratt. And then there are the majority of his Mamma Mias. They were in slow motion, and I kind of wish they weren't because it kills the impact of that phrase. It was a passable Mario voice, and it worked for the realism of the movie, especially at times where you're sitting with Mario, Luigi, and their family. You don't really want Mario to be the only one that sounds like an overly exaggerated Italian. So I get the creative decision. But don't worry. Among the voice cast, there were some clear standouts that crushed it from start to finish. Let's begin with Jack Black as Bowser. He was commanding, playful, humorous in his own way, and there were moments where he'd be at the piano and go full Jack Black mode, but I laughed. I enjoyed it, and honestly, he was a really good casting decision for Bowser, because he can get sinister sometimes. He might scare some kids, not gonna lie. But for the most part, man, Jack Black, to me, was the clear standout. And then right next to him is Charlie Day as Luigi. Even though, and we'll talk about in my negatives, Luigi gets sidelined a little bit, too much for my liking. I don't like that decision. I will say when we get Charlie Day as Luigi, it works. And you know what? Charlie Day is just such a likable actor anyway, that when he voiced Luigi in this movie, I smiled. Even when I guess he's getting captured by Dry Bones and Shy Guys. But for the most part, Charlie Day, man, another standout. Again, I just wish a little bit more screen time was given to him. And then there's Keegan-Michael Key as Toad. And when I tell you he was perfect as Toad, I mean it. Now, to me, this is the best voice performance in the entire film, and it's probably my favorite. Why? Because Keegan-Michael Key actually gives us a completely different voice. If you didn't know Keegan-Michael Key was voicing Toad, you wouldn't know it was him. And I think that's really cool, and that goes to show how much time and effort he put into this performance. That's why he's the best, and that's why he's my favorite in this movie. And he's responsible for a very, very funny moment early on that, as a video game fan, it made me laugh so hard. And I can't forget about the supporting cast, because they had some shining stars too, like the legend Kevin Michael Richardson as Cayman. He was seriously so good. And then there's Fred Armisen as Cranky Kong, and Cranky Kong was not only very cranky, but kind of had a feel-good moment too. So we've got great animation, an awesome score, an expansive world, a voice cast that was not bad with some clear standouts, and Chris Pratt's Mario voice is passable. So what is wrong with this film? Well, I've got some negatives to talk about, you guys. And I'm not trying to be overly negative here because, again, I did not hate this film. But there are some issues that stick out like a sore mushroom here. So let's begin with the story. It's too shallow for my liking, and often it does find itself just relying a little bit too much on nostalgia. The writing by Matthew Fogel could have been much stronger. The script was very surface level, and for kids, I get it. It needs to be accessible, but for fans, I think you're going to find yourself wanting a little bit more. They could have leaned into the Mario and Luigi angle a bit more as well, with spending more time in the first act than they did. They breezed through so many sequences and moments of emotion that I almost wonder if maybe the appeal here was to get people introduced into the world and prove to you that we can at least animate this really well and then give you a more in-depth story in the sequel. And if that's the case, okay, I guess they succeeded, but it doesn't make for a compelling movie all of the time. I really enjoyed the Peach and Bowser dynamic as well, but their moments in the third act were also skirted by, and sometimes, like I mentioned, the script relies too much on nostalgia to carry it through, and it's noticeable. Now listen, at least this script is better than Minions Rise of Gru, which Matthew Fogel also wrote, so listen, I can't tell you that I was expecting anything Oscar level in terms of writing. And I know in the games the story isn't very complex with Mario, Peach, Bowser, and everyone surrounding him, but there are glimmers of what could have been a more layered script here that would have actually worked for kids and adults. So that's what I hope they lean into more in the sequel, if we get one. And if you're wondering why I didn't mention Anya Taylor-Joy or Seth Rogen in the standouts for the voice cast, that's because they were the two complete misses among our voice cast. So let's start with Anya Taylor-Joy as Princess Peach. I think Anya Taylor-Joy is an excellent actor. I've liked her since I saw her in The Witch, and she is so darn good on screen. But as Princess Peach, she was miscast. She just simply doesn't deliver here. There's little to no range for Princess Peach, and it's very apparent how her co-stars are carrying each scene that she's a part of. When Princess Peach is emoting on screen, very angry, very happy, very intense, I don't feel like the voice matches all the time. If anything, I just think it was a bad voice performance. It's not even that she was not able to do the job well, she just decided to be very monotone and very one note way too often. So I'm sorry y'all, but Anya Taylor-Joy just didn't deliver as Princess Peach, and it held the film back at times, and I hate to say that. So maybe in the sequel she'll improve a bit, but in this movie I can't tell you she was good. And some people were asking about Princess Peach being girly in my comments, and I will say that there are times where they lean into that maybe just a tad, but for the most part she's very strong-willed, which I actually really appreciate because Princess Peach is not some damsel in distress. She can fight. So I do want to now talk about Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. I was already on the fence about his performance because in the trailer I wasn't sold entirely, and I also wasn't just sold on the idea of Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, and unfortunately my worries came to light and they were proven correct because yeah, he's another miscast. Seth Rogen has no gravitas for the character. Donkey Kong is some sort of intimidating and then playful, jovial character eventually, but Seth Rogen tries his best and really can never get across a character that has a dynamic range. He even tried his laugh with DK and it just doesn't work. He's just Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. There is no distinguishing, differentiating factor. I mean, when you look at what Keegan-Michael Key and Jack Black do in this film, even, heck, Chris Pratt to a degree, you're like, Seth Rogen, where are you going? You know, you're not matching that level of energy. So, for me, Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong far too often just took me out of the movie and distracted me, and I thought, gosh, you could have got anyone else. So, you know, yeah, those couple of miscasts are big miscasts, though, because Princess Peach and DK are big characters in the Mario universe, but also in this movie. And speaking of main characters, guys, Luigi getting sidelined after the first 20 minutes of this movie baffles me. I don't understand that decision. I get that Mario's the titular character. You're focusing on him, his journey, Princess Peach, saving Mushroom Kingdom, I understand. But you set up something so cool with Mario and Luigi's dynamic in the first 20 minutes, and then you abandon it completely? It doesn't make sense to me. There's even a moment where we get another glimpse at Luigi, and he says nothing. I'm like, are we scrapped for like change? Do we not have money to give Charlie Day for a few more lines here or scenes? It's baffling to me, and I really wish that they gave Luigi more shine, because Charlie Day again is one of the best parts of this cast. So I'm hoping in the sequel they come around and think, maybe we did have a missed opportunity there, because they definitely struck out in this regard. And lastly, in this section, guys, while the score is good by Brian Tyler, the soundtrack is awful. There are so many needle drops here that just blew my mind in terms of how ill-timed and poorly placed they were. I don't know why we have to get things like Thunderstruck, like Take Me On, or Take On Me. Excuse me, you guys are gonna grill me in the comments, aren't you? But I love those songs. I love Take On Me. Aha is great, but no, not in the context of a Mario movie. The score was doing just fine. Why not lean on that more? Why do we have to get these weird needle drops that clearly are trying to pander to the mainstream audience? Great, but you know what you could do to pander to the mainstream audience? Make an accessible story that's structured, that has a good voice cast, that gets across a heartfelt message to kids and adults alike. But why do we need these weird needle drops? And the soundtrack was just awful and took me out of the film more times than I can count, to be honest. Every time a song would drop, I always think, why not stick with the score, which was working just fine? So that's one thing I wish we could just replace, is the soundtrack choices here, because they were pretty bad. So now it's time for my final thoughts. And guys, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, well, I'm surprised. I am pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this movie, how much fun I was having, the smiles on my face, the laughter. There's an escapism element here. Of course, that goes away a bit with the soundtrack choices and some really bad miscasts in the voice acting category, but I will say, for the most part, I enjoyed the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Now, is it a 5 out of 5? No. Is it even a 4 out of 5? Maybe, but I would give it a very strong 3.5 Mamma Mias out of 5. And the reason I say that is because the movie overall spoke to my inner child, and I just had fun with it. You don't have to go into every movie thinking this is going to be the greatest work of art ever, especially for video game adaptations. So while this isn't nearly on the level of Sonic and what they've done with those two movies, I will say the Super Mario Bros. Movie is helping break that video game curse by, yes, playing it safe, but for the most part, nailing it in some voice acting categories. The animation is gorgeous, the way they brought to life the Mushroom Kingdom, and even moments in the Darklands, like I mentioned. It just worked for me. So I would tell you, I recommend this movie, whether it be with your family, with your significant other. You're going to find things to love about this film. And hey, even if you don't like Mario or know nothing about Mario, I think you're going to find yourself enjoying the core message of this film. Because by the end, there was a scene where I said to myself, oh, there was a tinge in my heart. I felt that. So overall, yeah, 3.5 Mamma Mias out of 5 for the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Not the worst film you'll see all year, and it isn't the best. It's just an enjoyable movie. You know, so it's okay to have those every once in a while. And if you were hoping for a lot more than that, you'll probably walk away disappointed. So temper your expectations a bit, video game fans. But as a fan of this franchise, I can tell you that I confidently enjoy and recommend this movie. So there you have it, you guys. That's my real review for the Super Mario Brothers movie. Again, hits theaters April 5th. So let me know what you think about it in the comments down below when you see it. And do you disagree with me? Agree with me? Are you kind of in the middle? And hey, if you're at this point, subscribe to the channel, y'all. Hit the big red button below and join the real family, because, you know, I am here for this Nintendo cinematic universe. Can we get a Super Smash Brothers movie? I hope. Alrighty, y'all. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. Man, alright. I'm getting back to it. Don't judge me.